I did a Skype consultation with someone who actually watches my videos. So he kind of knew what a lot of my answers were going to be even before I said them. And one of the things he said was, I know you're just going to tell me that I'm not grounded. And I said, true. However, grounding means different things to different people, so I should probably explain what I mean by grounding. Because grounding could mean buying those blankets or those wristbands that you plug into the outlet, and it gives you electrons from the ground to ground you. So grounding to me, not only is it psychological, being in a sense of well-being, a sense of foundation, a sense of knowing who you are. So that would be a psychological grounding. But physically, and I don't really make a huge distinction between the physical and the mental, because it's all one system. But from a more physical standpoint, grounding. So grounding obviously includes your feet. So I've done a lot of videos about feet, and so with the walking cycle or gait cycle, you have heel strike, arch comes down, big toe. So that's supination, pronation, resupination. A lot of people lack on the left side the sense of heel strike. On the right side, they lack a sense of pronation. Pronation is needed on both sides in order to promote rest. The rib cage can only expand with pronation. If you are stuck in a supinated state with your feet, that is classic extension and tension. So pronation is necessary for the brain to sense the ground appropriately and relax and expand the rib cage and position the pelvis properly for walking and breathing. As you travel up, let's say we're talking about the left side, because the left side's the side that really gets ungrounded the most. Now the right side, because you tend to favor the right side, you're more grounded on the right side. Doesn't mean you're actually sensing the ground properly, but at least you have more compression on that side. You have more body weight on that side. You have a greater sense of the ground on the right. We have less of a sense of the ground on the left, because we never put our weight completely on the left, because the pattern is putting us on the right and never allows us to shift completely to the left. So if this is our pelvis, obviously, and here is the femur and the tibia, because that's just how it's going to be. When we're over on the right side, the pelvis is forward on the left. I can't do this three-dimensionally because I only have two hands. Forward on the left, back on the right, and generally oriented to the right. That's us on our right foot. At this point, this left leg is externally rotated to stay straight. And at this point, there's not a whole lot of compression on this left hip. Grounding, sense of the ground, requires compression on that left side. The only time you're going to get compression on that left side is when your weight shifts to the left as the pelvis on the left goes back and the entire pelvis orients to the left, and the left femur leg internally rotates on the pelvis. So they're kind of screwing into each other. That's left stance. That's what we need to be stable on our left side, and that's giving compression. Compression, sensing compression, or getting compression via bone-on-bone position or muscular contraction with the correct muscles will give that compression and thus sense of the ground. Getting your pelvis to neutral, or let's say it's this way. Let's say you're a PEC, because I've been talking about PECs a lot. Pelvis is forward on both sides. You're ungrounded because you don't have proper anything at that point. Pulling the pelvis back into neutrality is not grounding. That just gives you the chance to ground. Now you actually have to practice grounding. And that requires internal rotation of the left leg and probably the right leg, depending on the right leg. Let's leave the right leg out of it. Left leg at least. That will require internal rotation of the left leg and a pelvis orienting to the left to create that screwing effect at pronation mid-stance on the left leg. Without that, you're not really grounded. So just getting neutral is not grounding. And without grounding, these programs won't really work because you're not really retraining your muscles at that point. You're not teaching your brain how to walk and breathe. You're just getting yourself neutral. Now, so that's the femur on a pronated foot. So we need a pronated left foot that can sense the heel at the same time, internal rotation of the left leg, and internal rotation of the pelvis on the leg. We call that AFIR. That's left stance at the pelvis and the femur. That's the myokin class, myokinematic restoration class. Now, up above, this pelvis is orienting to the left. The lumbar spine is orienting to the left. We're on our left leg. Great. Now, what happens here? A lot of times people put their weight on their left leg, but their upper body is still over to the right. You can see it all the time because their left shoulder is still higher than their right shoulder. So this is kind of how they're standing. You got to use your obliques, internal obliques. Exhalation to bring that torso to the left and close down the left side in 3 planes of motion. Sagittally, frontally, and transversely. So we have this, again, we have this screwing effect. And then the torso has to be able to rotate to the right without the pelvis going with it. Pelvis has to stay back, torso has to rotate to the right, setting us up for our next step. Without that, it means you don't really have your left obliques. You don't have torso rotation, and even if you do get to the left side, you're going to fall back to the right prematurely. That also requires posterior ribcage expansion so that the lumbar spine actually can go all the way to the left and the torso can go all the way to the left and stay left as it counter-rotates back to the right side while still in the left hemisphere without prematurely going back to the right side. So that's required for proper grounding also. All right, do you have that? Again, getting yourself neutral is not grounding. It's not the same thing. You don't have proper mechanics going on. It's too easy. You haven't strengthened anything, so you haven't retrained proper stance, nor swing, nor torso rotation, so it's too easy for your body just to go back to the right side, right back into the pattern. Remember, neutrality is not grounding. Or, well, you could say it's grounding, but it's not full grounding, okay? It's a step towards grounding. Now, with the head and the neck, when you are in a right stance position, that neck is oriented to the right. Well, it doesn't have to be. Let's just say you have a neck pattern also. And that neck would be oriented to the right. And it actually starts to side bend. So if we're like this, to stay straight, which is this way, it'll have to side bend to the left and begin to rotate to the left. But it's still oriented to the right. So we need to get that neck to the left, side bending, drop that left shoulder, side bend the neck to the right, rotate to the right. And if you have this on top of this, left ZOA that we call it, left side compression, on top of this femur, on top of internally rotated left femur and a pelvis that's oriented to the left, AFIR, on top of a foot that can actually pronate properly, then you have grounding. And that is what grounding means to me. So grounding is always going to be the issue for me, particularly on the left side. To me, everything comes back to grounding. But what is stopping you from grounding? It can be anything in any of those areas, including up to the cranium. And this is where it gets complicated, my lack of proper visual sense, the crossbite that I developed over time, supinated feet, arches that are too high. All those are the 3 main sensory discords or sensory interference that prevent you from grounding properly. Some people need to get all 3 of those taken care of. Most do not. 80% do not need that. However, definitely 80% probably do not need anything visual or teeth-wise. Feet have to be manipulated quite often, or just better shoes. But that is what grounding means to me. If you found that video interesting or you liked it, feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Anything is helpful. Thank you.